It's always a pleasure to be, I mean, this is the home state, Thank God I'm not giving this presentation in, no, not up north, but last week, in Notre Dame. And we kind of dove in there in the last second there. But today's presentation came about because, and I think he's in the room, Blake Thompson asked if I would, there he is, take some time and chat with the group about what we would call like the basics of signal processing for broadcast. And that's what we're going to be doing. So here's a bit of an overview, and I probably guess I do need the reading glasses here. I'm not one of these to, read off the slides, so a lot of this, is pretty, I think, self-explanatory. But there's a couple things that I do want to focus on here. Anyone who's done this work knows that this is not a passive exercise. It's not something where you can just say, oh, it's over a sandwich, I'll go take this thing, stick it in the rack, push a button, and walk out the door and be done with it. This is something where if you're new to it, by all means take the time to make new mistakes, because you will, and you'll learn from them. As a matter of fact, I was telling somebody that just this morning, when I got down here, that there were times that I would do experiments in the middle of the night on the nation's #1 market, and even though I had a separate audio chain that I could play in a closed loop environment, every once in a while I would, there was a green button and a red button, the red button being the backup, and I'd push the red button and I'd quickly push the green button because something wasn't quite right. Thank God Scott Shannon was asleep. So, because the phone call would have been like this. Fingo, Shannon, was that crazy crap I hear on Z100, was that the work of you? Because Scott was known to speak like that. Something and thinking about today's presentation, and I want you to know that I've given some thought to this because the landscape is different, I know, today for all of you as compared to when I got started. Today's broadcast environment is a lot different. I know that many of you are handling multiple radio stations, and in some cases, not only multiple radio stations, but multiple markets. So being able to say, okay, this week, I'm going to take time to install a new product or make changes and devote a good portion of my time to that. I know that in many cases, it's not that way. But, obviously I'm reflecting on that of a different era because I was able to do that. And it wasn't just because it might have been New York, and we did it in Cleveland and even back in the, when I was cutting my teeth, back in the time of the, Stone Age, back at WELW, we were able to give it good solid time. So, but still, these are things you do have to give considerations to. One of the things I'm going to ask that as you embark on it, and some of you, and for some of you that I see here in the audience, I know this is all, if it sounds like processing 101 and you want to take your phones out and surf Facebook, I understand. But some of the things that I think are requirements that help: an open mind, having time, and again, like I say, I know it's a precious commodity, a good perspective, and you have to have a goal and a direction as to what you're doing. Understanding your market conditions, and I think one of the most important things is having a point person. This is something that's very vital, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. I won't read this, but this here just gives you an idea how I look at, what if we were to define audio processing, because it is a bit black magic, and it is some engineering, and it is some science, and it's a weird way that we bring it all together. So some of you may be saying, why processing? Well, on one hand, we do utilize it to make sure that we're adhering to the laws and the legal limits of what's, maximum modulation. I realize there's some people that may think that, when I worked in New York, some people looked at the mod monitors like, your speed limit, and there were times that people broke the speed limit. And then there's another thing, and this is the part that I always loved about it, the whole psychoacoustic aspect to it. Not okay, put it in, crank it up, and let's just burn the tower down. But how can we get it to be to where that what used to be said to me, and I always took this as a compliment. They would say, New York, you knew when you had Z100. I mean, yes, it jumped out of the radio, but it had this sound, and I've said this before, and you'll probably see it said later here in the presentation. It had this sound to where it's like Roger Daltrey, the way he would describe the music of The Who. It's like somebody punching you in the nose and telling you, "I love you." I mean, it just, it grabbed you in a good, healthy way. So there's a psychoacoustic aspect to it. And also, we're going to, apply it because, we want to overcome certain things in your listening environment. Road noise, I know it's been, over the years, that was always a challenge for your classical stations or your fine art stations and things of that nature. And then there's the whole, this part also, I see my mafia buddy here, Greg Savoldi. We've shared a lot of pizza talking about the competition, the psychology, and the marketing aspect, and how signal processing plays into that. It's like that. It's that secret ingredient that can help you get over the line to what what successful radio stations need. I'm not going to get into the loudness debate, but do know that there is a loudness debate that's out there. I always tried to present the radio station to be as competitive as possible, but even Frank has always had, there's a limit, and I will tell you, when I worked in New York, God love Shannon, because we had another guy who came to work with us who was the ops manager. His name was Steve Kingston. We used to refer to him as the Mouse. And if he was here, he'd be going, "Come on, man." But the Mouse loved to push it. And every once in a while he'd say, "Come on, Franco, push it." And at one time, believe it or not, Shannon came in, he goes, "Franco, my ears are bleeding," which basically meant turn it down a little bit. So, and there was a reason we had a label at the top of the rack that said, "The threshold of pain starts here." And we were kind of proud of that. So, all right, let's talk about the stuff having to do with signal processing. Do clarify your objectives. That's very, very important. List what you think is the most important need. Also, sometimes you may be having to you may have something on the air, a product that you like, but you're needing to react to because the guy up the dial or down the dial did something, and people need a reaction. And sometimes you don't need to react. Sometimes it might just be, hey, if they want to burn a hole on the dial, but it's hard to listen to, it's on them to, excuse my language, piss off their listeners, Or is there any issues to resolve or to avoid? Objectives and clarifying them is very, very important, because it's so easy to just run off into the weeds and start twisting knobs or moving, today, not so much knobs, it's, screens you're moving around, and then you're stuck. It's like, now what did I do? So, matter of fact, I've even, there have been times I've tripped over myself on the same thing, not just with processing, but with like the locomotive. It's not operating a certain way, and I'll adjust this, do this, and then I'm like, it's better or worse, but I don't know why. So your objectives are very, very important. I can't say this enough, and again, I know time is a commodity, but you do need to have available time. If next week it's on your list to go work on the audio processing, but you've got 3 high school games to do and the county fair and, you know, trying to get something done with the new studios, that's not the time to be messing with the audio processing because, believe me, you're going to get tripped up by something. Know that you've got some time that you can give to it because this, you know, it is important, and you're gonna, if you've not done this before, I'm going to tell you this. You're going to learn to listen to the radio like you've never listened to the radio ever before. Back, you know, it was back in 1978, about this time, I was hired at WMMS by a gentleman by the name of Jim Somich. God rest his soul. And I remember he gave me the nickname Foti. So all through the years, you know, it was Foti. And I remember he said to me, he goes, Foti, you're going to learn to listen to the radio like you've never, ever listened to it before. And at first I remember, you know, I'm some snot-nosed 22-year-old kid. Yes, I'm 67 years old now. But I remember thinking, and his nickname was the Pooh. I'm like, I have no effing idea what you're talking about, Pooh, but okay. And you want to know something? He was right. I mean, you really learn to listen to the radio in ways like you never did before. And if you go through this exercise, or you've been through this exercise, you guys know what I'm talking about. How much time is enough? You know, I'd say plan on a week, at least a little bit of time each day. The last point here, I can't stress enough. Be aware of ear burnout. It's easy to do. Yours truly is guilty of it. I'll be working on some new algorithm, and I'll be working late at night, and I'll be, oh yeah, man, I never heard Bob O'Reilly sound so damn good in my life. Oh, great. And I drive home, get up next day, and I go in, and I put it on. I'm like, what the hell were you thinking? And I got to tell you, sometimes it's the cat that tells me this, because all the algorithms that have worked, my cat has done. You know, and they're Sicilian, as Greg knows. You know, so all the good stuff the cats and locomotives do, the bad stuff's on the fat boy here. But why did it sound bad? Because I burned my ears out. So one of the things I try to do, even if I know it's going to be a long session, I go no longer than 20 minutes. And then I stop, I turn it off, I go, you know, pull out the phone, and I'll be like, well, Browns are losing again, you know. Yeah, I got to pick on them. I can't stand their owner. I know they're 2-1. But in any case, you know, I give my ears a rest. I go get some iced tea or something like that. And then I come back, and I'll get back at it. So do give thought to that. So good processing does require, you know, more in the box. And, you know, there's a box and some tweaks. There's numerous functions working together. And all of these matter. They all matter. Your source material, there's aspects of whatever your playout system is, studio, the STL, and I realize that now today we've got STLs that basically are sitting in a server somewhere, so we're kind of, you know, that's becoming reduced or removed. The processor, obviously. When I say transmitter and antenna, the antenna part is probably more so for AM, because as you know, however broad your antenna is going to be is going to affect the on-air sound. And FM, you know, obviously a good exciter that has, you know, good modulator capability to where you can deliver a composite signal to the modulator such that it's basically transparent to whatever it is you're sticking in there. And oh yeah, you kind of need to know that, you know, you've got somebody who knows what the heck they're doing. So, you know, some of this stuff here, as you see coming up on the screen, may be, you know, old hat to you, but all of it is important. You know, rewinding the clock numerous years ago, we wouldn't have been saying this. We would have been talking about, you know, making sure the cart machines, you know, had like noise reduction on them or properly aligned. Or if you're still playing records, you know, back at MMS, you know, we used to change the styluses every, you know, month or so. You know, I mean, we used to spend a lot of money with I think we had the Stanton cartridges, but in any case, all of this matters, and especially today, knowing that, you know, I know there's still some coded audio that's ending up on the radio, even though, you know, storage is not that expensive. You know, obviously, if you can go lossless, you know, or linear, that, you know, that's pretty much the best way. So again, you know, clean audio is a must. Sampling rate, if if you're running digital, I prefer 48 because it's kind of an even multiple. 48, 96, 192, and that also will transpose over into the signal processing. So last point about normalizing gain. Here's something that I've learned that I think a lot of folks don't have a full understanding of. Normalize your system so that 0 dBFS on the console is 0 dBFS all through the path. If there's an STL, if there's an audio processor, the point being is that whatever the meter on the console's saying, that's what's going into the audio processor. Then you can't bump into some headroom issue. And remember, there is no plus 3 dBFS. 0 dBFS is, that's it. That's the ceiling. And it's not, there is no removable tiles like we have in here. Okay? You hit that ceiling, guess what? You're getting harmonic distortion, and worse yet, you're getting aliasing distortion. And that, aliasing distortion is probably the worst nastiness that can happen in the signal. Harmonic distortion is bad enough, but aliasing distortion is even worse. So if you're able to know that your whole system is aligned in this manner, that in and of itself is very good. The STL, in some ways, this is becoming less and less of a point today because we have the capability of sticking it either in AES or on an IP signal, and that makes it transparent such that whatever's leaving the processor is basically going to end up into the exciter. All right, processor, okay, you do need to get to know the product. And sometimes getting to know the product, on the one hand say, you would recommend reading the manual? Yes. Okay. And if you don't want to read the manual, which 99.9% of the folks don't want to do, then take the doggone thing, set it on the bench, don't stick it in the rack and hook it up to the transmitter, but set it up to where you can audition it for yourself. Go through all the menus or twist the knobs and go, oh, what happens if I take the stereo enhance thing and turn it up all the way? Whoa, I don't like that. Okay. Get to know it, get a comfort zone so that then when you're on the radio and you want to walk the walk, you'll feel more comfortable being able to do that. Some of the other stuff here that's listed, I just put it in here as just items to be aware of. Obviously, when it comes to, you want to make sure you've got somebody who is able to adjust the thing. And believe it or not, the person in this picture is now the CEO of the Telos Alliance. That's Scott Stiefel, back many years ago when he came in one day on Halloween thinking that this is how I would have dressed back about 50 years ago when I was in high school. So, the joke's on me, guys. All right, the transmitter antenna, again, a lot of this, I realize it may sound like, it's repetitive, but all of it does matter because we're talking about, on one hand, while we're talking about setting up an audio processor, it's really one piece that's, the sum of a whole bunch of parts. And if you get them all, operating properly, it's just like Greg, the Corleone family, when they knew they had to go take out all the 5 families. There was no problem whatsoever, So, all right, the adjustment procedure, again, review your objectives. How am I doing on time here? We're doing pretty good. We got till noon, right? 55. Okay, so we got 15 minutes yet. Yep. All right. Yeah, because they're going to hold some trains for me at the train station up, north of the city. But in any case, review your objectives. And here's something that I've always done. And I would do this back in the early days when I was consulting. I always operated from a point of reference. And sometimes it might just be what's on the air right now, even if you're not happy with it. Because if you put something on that's so different, many times, even if different is better, the initial impression might be, well, I don't like that. Have a point of reference, and sometimes you might say, but we've got a processor from this company and then we're putting in yours, but we can't make yours sound like that one. I understand that. But again, having some point of reference does help. Don't make hasty changes. You know, I mean, if you're saying, oh, I'm hearing a lot of distortion, so I'm going to turn the clipper down 7 dB. Whoa! No, I mean, you know, move it a dB here or there, you know, or it's not enough. Bump it up maybe half a dB. You know, go a little bit. You know, make an adjustment. Go to lunch. Listen in the car. You know, pick somebody else's brain. There's something that this whole thing that I call the sleep on it method, this grew out of developing processing. When I told you about how I'd go home at night going, man, it sounds great, and then come in the next day and be upset about it. Do the same thing. You know, if you're working, because a lot of times we'll do it at night, if you're happy with it, stop, go home, get a good night's rest, lets the ears reset and reboot. And if you wake up in the morning and something's not quite right, you go in there. At some point, you're working it down like a funnel. And at some point, if you wake up the next day and go, wow, I still like it, I'm happy with it as I was last night, stop. You're there, okay? And by the way, if you're wondering, oh, Frank, are you going to come in here and give us some of the secret presets? There are no secret presets. There really aren't. I mean, because, you know, if there are, I'd be giving them to Ryan Day so that he could have them to call as audibles when they have to go face that team up north coming the end of the season. That, if you're wondering, do I like, you know, if I don't like that team up north, you're correct, I don't. They illegally use the same colors as my beloved Wycliffe Blue Devils. I have a lawsuit against them. I'm going to get them a brand new color, and it's going to be called clear. So, all right. Processing tweak considerations. Get your, you know, if you're a music station, get the music going first. You know, don't be monkeying with the processing, you know, to get the music right and the mics, because a lot of times you'll adjust the processing, and then the jacks are going to go, something sounds different. Is it better? I don't know. You know, and you may have to go back and tweak with the mic processing, but when you get the music to where you like it or you're close, then mess with the, I get ahead of myself, guys. Then mess with the processing. Also, deal with one issue at a time, you know, and by that I mean, if you wake up the next morning and go, okay, something's not quite right. What is it? Is it loudness? Yeah, it's loudness, EQ, and it's sounding real dense. Okay, of those three, what's most important? Too dense, okay. Work on that. Get that good. When you can eliminate that one, then what's the next thing? Not enough bass. Okay, work on that. Then you get that done. Now we need to, you know, add some loudness. Then you get that. As you see, you've got a way. You're navigating a path, and that's a way that, at least for me, that's what's worked for me, and that's what I would suggest for you guys as well. Factors determining audio quality. All of this matters. I'm not going to go into a lot of it because I don't want to take up all of our time. How to listen. Have a known, successful, respected monitoring location. And if some of you are going, the GM's car, I would eliminate that, because I've heard stories about how processing has been adjusted because some general manager or owner had a certain type of Lexus that didn't have the greatest radio in it, and you know, it may sound great in his car, and it, excuse my language, sucks everywhere else. I would have like a good professional set of speakers in an area that you're comfortable with, and you can reference back to that. Also, you know, some known, well, you know, table radio, some small speakers, and that helps you have a reference that you can come back to. And it also helps you to be able to calibrate your ears. Again, at the end here, I mentioned the sleep on it method. So all of this matters. Some of this here, I'm not going to go into detail because we could spend all day chatting about it. On the audio processing adjustment, determine the decision maker. This is very important. I can't tell you how many times I've gone in the field to help a customer, and I'll say, who's going to decide how the processing is set? Well, we have a committee. No. Who's going to decide? If you guys think I'm joking, I'm dead serious. Well, we have a committee. There is no committee. Somebody's got to be the quarterback, or the starting pitcher, or the point guard. You've got to have, okay, I'll railroad, or the locomotive, okay? Somebody has to be the person that's going to say yay or nay. If they want to have influences from other people, that's fine, and especially if you're working with that person, you need to be able to go, oh, how are we doing? And, that's very, very important. Please don't use a committee. I apologize, there is no magic preset. There really isn't. I've had more email or phone messages. Frank, we bought your processor 14 years ago. We're still looking if you would email us the Frank Foti Magic Preset. The only one who might have the Frank Foti Magic Preset is either Silvio, my cat, or Clemenza, who's a cat, because they've got it, I don't. So the last thing I'm going to mention here on this, the speed limit issue. This is the whole thing having to do with modulation. Most of us, I know, all want to adhere to operating at 100% modulation. If you've got a guy up the street that's doing 110, that's a full dB of modulation more. You may want to have a phone call with them and ask them to turn it down, or you'd call Luca Brazzi or Greg Savoldi, or you have to have a talk with your own management to determine, is it something you wish to go there, but that's not coming here for me. Again, save loudness for last. That's the thing a lot of people usually want to be yakking about early on, but it usually get everything else in line. The texture or the signature, which could be how dense you want it, having to do with the amount of compression and limiting, your EQ. If you're going to, for stereo, if you're going to employ enhancement, things of that nature, and then deal with the loudness issue last. One of the things I do, like even when I'm working in the lab, I save stuff quite often. On this computer, I do a lot of development in a program called MATLAB. If you were to look in the folder, there's probably hundreds of files, and every one of them probably has some, coefficient that's a little different. The reason being is, if I get tripped up, I can go back to something. You can do the same with presets. Measuring your results, again, I think it's kind of processing 101, but still, these are things to, have as part of your toolbox. This here is something that I've always kind of made use of, what I call like the funnel concept. At the wide end of the funnel is where you've got your widest dynamic range of your incoming signal. That's where you're going to apply your wideband AGC, and then the subsequent sections are going to funnel the signal down to where you've got that nice, tightly controlled, yet properly processed signal on the output. All of this here is basically just some overview of multiband processing philosophy. Yes, for those of you who are wondering how to get it loud, here's some things to give some thought to. I'm not going to go into all the great detail because I think we've got about 5 more minutes, and I've got a few more slides I need to zip through here. The next thing I do want to talk about, because I've been talking about over the air, I'm just going to assume that most of you have streams, and those streaming audio or HD radio, that's a whole separate way of dealing with signal processing, because instead of dealing with clipping and preemphasis, we're dealing with coded audio and look-ahead limiters and things of that nature. So, and codecs and bit rates and all of that, again, it all adds up. It could all add up in a healthy way, or we don't want it to add up in the wrong way. So these are the things that we do have to give consideration to. As much as I'd like to say there's a free lunch on things with audio processing, there really isn't. So if you can understand where the challenges are, be it for FM, AM, coded audio, that will help you, because in giving thought to each of those transmission platforms and understanding how they work, you'll be able to apply whatever work you need to do with respect to signal processing that much easier. There's a little picture here to give you an idea what how perceptual coding operates. Same thing here. Typical loudness mechanisms we use for over-the-air broadcasting can cause trouble in coded audio, most notably clipping. The other noticeable aspect is limiters that operate with extremely fast attack and release. If you've got something that generates intermod, codecs don't like it. I'm just letting you know. I've even spent time, shooting pictures to where, codecs, even at the bit rates we do for HD radio, you can create some nastiness because of timing functions that are operating a little bit too fast. That's a little bit what we're talking about here. I think I probably covered a little bit of this. And as we start moving forward so that everything isn't just about the audio processing, I wanted to talk a little bit about what we call the evolving ecosystem in the broadcasting world. We now have the ability to stick the FM signal, and I think Matt touched on it earlier, where we can even put the composite signal on, on a network. We now have taken the whole signal processing world and we've stuck the whole complete FM stereo processor into the cloud. And we have this running now. And, so on one hand, I want to say, we're all excited because it's all running somewhere out there. But I also know, and I want it said, so you hear it from me here now, while I know that a lot of the world is going into the ether, there's still a lot of people that their comfort level is having a box. And I get that, and we as a company will be supporting that. Even though the box is running software, I know some guys, or gals, their comfort and going to bed at night is knowing that this box is in the rack and it's operating in a certain way. This is a quick little picture as to, like, if you were to try to have everything pretty much operating in a networked environment. We have this new product called Forza, and at the end the signal goes to an MPX node. This is one of the screens from the MPX node. Give you a quick little view as to, on a block diagram as to how it could be, or it could be like point to multi-point, which I think is kind of like what they were explaining in the, for the translators, So we've got that. So a little bit of crystal ball stuff there from yours truly. And I thought I'd end things because this was the rack, and it was up near the top there where it talked about the threshold of pain started there. And this was the signal processing rack from 1987, back when the station was in Secaucus, New Jersey. And I thought I'd end today's presentation.
It was, I don't know, it was a magic place to me. I remember when we first were getting ready to go on the air, I remember one day I'm standing here and I'm just looking out the window, and all of a sudden something hit me in the feet. And it was our chief engineer, Frank Foti, rolled that little dolly out, and he's on, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm just kind of soaking up the atmosphere, man. I'm just feeling it." I said, "Frank, I truly believe that radio history is going to be made in this room." He's still on his back there. He said, "Man, you just gave me goosebumps." He said, "Let me get up there and look out the history window." Before we ever even signed on the air, they were working on building the studio. And I was promised by Mr. Malwright, that it would be a Rolls-Royce radio station. So I went over to take a look at it one day, and I found out we weren't getting a Rolls-Royce. We were getting a Volkswagen. They had this fella in there, and he said, "You must be the new punk, Scott Shannon." And I go, yeah, who are you? He said, "Well, I'm your boss. I'm the chief engineer." I went, oh, boy. And I got a hold of Jim, and I said, "Jim, we got a problem here. And unless I get another engineer in here, I'm going to have to go back to Tampa. I need somebody, maybe a little hipper, a little younger, someone who understands my language." When he got through with the litany of different engineers that they had describing each one, I said, "Is that all you got?" And he says, "No, there is one more fellow. I don't know, though. He's very hard to deal with. He sits in his office and cranks The Who up at full volume all day long. Well, is there another problem? He said, well, he's a little crazy. I said, a little crazy? He said, no, he's a whole lot crazy.
I'd been told by some corporate folks, they said, you were lucky to have worked around some pretty intense people in Cleveland at WMMS, which was a station I grew up on. They said, Scott's like the people at MMS, but on steroids.
Next day, in comes Frank Foti. Oh, my God, what a mess.
And I hear this voice. So I go,
Is that Franco?
yeah. He goes,
Hi, my name's Scott Shannon.
I told him, I want a radio station that pounds, that jumps out of the radio. I want a flamethrower.
C100.
He said, I'm your guy.
the best way I could sum it up is, if I may borrow a phrase from Roger Daltrey of The Who, you know, he's always talked about The Who's music as somebody punching you in the nose and saying, I love you.
It's like songs sound different on this radio station. I don't understand how, but they sound different. There's like a magic there.
From a technical standpoint, the sound of the station was booming and loud, and from an engineering standpoint, it was compressed. It just sounded really, really cool.
Guys, thank you very much. Are we taking questions? Or are we out of time?
Yeah.
That's all right.
So anyway, Frank, thanks for the great session and your support of the conference. Our exhibitor showcase and luncheon sponsored by Telos starting now in the Short North Ballroom. Plenty of food for everybody. We hope you had a chance to catch up with some old friends, meet some new folks. Please be sure to spend some time with the exhibitors during the lunch break. Their support and participation help make this event possible. We want to make sure that our conference is a valuable investment of their time and resources. Afternoon breakout sessions begin at 2:20. Be sure to join us for the afternoon door prize drawing. We got a number of great items to give away, including that LG 4K television. We'll be drawing for winners during the closing general session. You must be present to win. Thanks and enjoy lunch.